right, so where were we?
We were talking about the comparison between, say, the Tea Party movement and Occupy Wall Street and Stop the Machine.
So what I would say is that the libertarians have had their hands in different things when they've been up in the Wall Street area, and that's something that just kind of happens, and we're going to have to deal with it in the best way that we can in terms of what that movement will do to the Occupy Wall Street crowd. In my own personal opinion, I don't think it's going to phase as much. We're pretty much independent of every single major media outlet that's down there right now. They don't really have much to worry about in the way of like them co-opting a movement, at least from my standpoint. And I would say that as far as a terroristic kind of approach to things, because I know you mentioned that, what I would get at is I would say that just because Glenn Beck says that people are terrorists, or the Tea Partiers are identified as terrorists because they want less government in the area, again, according to you, doesn't mean that there's a terrorist group that's somehow infiltrated Wall Street. I think it's preposterous.
Well, no, and that wasn't the question, and I'm not saying that anyone's calling anybody here or on Wall Street terrorists, but it was just interesting. You've got Nancy Pelosi and even President Obama this week saying that he feels your pain with the Occupy Wall Street group, and yet the same administration and former speaker calls the Tea Party an AstroTurf terroristic type group. So I'm just curious, because there's a lot of money into putting this thing together down here.
Okay, I mean,
don't you think?
Well, okay, a couple things. First of all, I wouldn't say there's a lot of money in putting this thing together. I would say that there's a lot of money in protecting this thing from like the American public, at least in terms of the major media outlets is concerned. And that only happened within the last few weeks. What I would get at is I would say that I wouldn't say that anybody here is terroristic, and I would say that that's a very far cry that's been used to disable and or facilitate fear into the minds of people that don't necessarily know exactly what they're talking about as far as politics is concerned, and a way to discourage people from coming out and airing their own voices. I think that there is no reason for that kind of sentiment. I regret that is a sentiment that some people hold, be it in the mainstream media or in society at large. And I would say that...
so you don't see either side? So you don't see any justification in calling Tea Partiers terrorists anymore?
No more than Republicans, no more than Democrats, no more than anybody else. And I would say that it's unfair to disseminate any sort of information about anybody as being a terroristic group or any of that kind of thing, because it discourages people from like what their real point is, which is coming out to voice their opinions, speak up for their civil rights, and to fight for their friends and their comrades. Like, for example, Code Pink. We've got a large women's rights movement that's going on here. I think it's a great thing. I think that's something that these kind of demonstrations are good for, to speak out against things that aren't exactly leveled. We've got a really shitty rape switch between males and females in this country. That's a gap that we need to close. Even beyond that, like you were asking me about President Barack Obama. I would say that President Barack Obama's got a really tough job, and that he's there and he's doing what he feels right, and that if we're to address the President of the United States, we're to address him with respect. Talk to him directly on ways that are able to facilitate the gentleman's intelligence, and not so much placate him for things that he's not even involved with on a microcosm. I would say that the things that are going on in places like this are things that are responded to, but not directly involved with.
Okay. And your name again and where you're from?
It's Kyle Christopher from Occupy Wall Street.
Thanks, Kyle.
No problem.